Hey guys, All in Crypto here, and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for another exciting YouTube video. Today, we're going to be looking at US regulations towards the cryptocurrency market. One of the reasons I'm so bullish on crypto blockchain is because right now it is still an unregulated industry. Now, that sounds strange. It's my belief that it will get regulated. And actually, if you study any technological revolution, whether it be the car industry, even railroads, telecom, all this kind of stuff. One of the industry or one of the factors, often, not in every single case, with an industry going mainstream and being mass implemented and adopted is regulatory clarity. And crypto will get that. Right now, it's a $1 trillion market. It's actually my belief, when you think about the ETFs and all the products and everything that will be sort of derived from it. I was looking at BlackRock's blockchain ETF earlier, which only comprises of crypto stocks, as in companies. It's a very bright future that we've got ahead of us. And today, we saw a huge win for transparency. This is from Brad Garlinghouse. Unredacted Hinman emails to be publicly available soon. Stay tuned as the lawyers work through the mechanics to make that happen. And of course, Judge Torres denies the SEC's motion to seal the Hinman documents. So essentially to conceal them and hide them from you guys. Now, why would they do that? Now, I actually remember when Hinman was the director of the SEC. And I actually remember watching, and I'll go ahead and move this screen for you. I actually remember watching this, and it was absolutely fascinating, guys, because what he had to say gave a lot of clarity to a lot of cryptos. And today, of course, we see the opposite of that with the likes of Gensler really making things hard for the entire industry. And again, crypto regulations, I believe, are the very thing that propels this industry from 1 trillion to the tens, and allows everybody to get involved with it. Right now, people, certainly in the US, other countries are a lot better. We had some great documents from the EU and also the UK, actually, recently, which I may cover if anybody wants to. Let me know in the comment section, where there was a lot more clarity given, certainly than the likes of the US. And then we'll look at actually how this is hurting the US in just a second, as we see companies move offshore. And a lot of them don't want to do that, like Coinbase, but they're very much backed into a corner.
So you said in your speech that neither...
So this, let me just introduce this before I start, so it makes a little bit of sense. This, of course, is Hinman, who at the time was the SEC director. Just listen to what he has to say about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the cryptocurrency industry.
Bitcoin nor Ether would be considered securities and thus not under the purview of the SEC. Can you very briefly explain what your reasoning is?
Sure, Bob. These are complex facts and circumstances tests, but when we look at Bitcoin or if we look at Ether and the highly decentralized nature of the networks, we don't see a third-party promoter where applying the disclosure regime would make a lot of sense. So we're comfortable in some sort of viewing these as items that don't have to be regulated as securities.
Now, you also talked about initial coin offerings or ICOs, which are ways of raising money using cryptocurrencies. Did you use a similar reasoning? You implied that most seem to be securities, ICOs, but some of them are not. Can you just show us what the difference is simply?
I wish we had a simple way to say this is in and this is out. As I mentioned, they're usually facts and circumstances tests. But a key factor is there a third-party promoter here who knows much more about the instrument than investors might? If that's the case, that's sort of an initial indicator that we might have a securities transaction. If people are buying it for investment and for a return and looking to that party for a return, then again, that's an indicia of a security. If you have, on the other hand, a token that's just used in the network for a good or service, and that's why people are buying it, and that service is available and up and running, not under development, then you may not have a security.
Mr. Hinman, Kelly here. Just to be clear, does that mean if stocks didn't have a third-party promoter, they wouldn't be securities?
Well, as you know, Kelly, stocks represent an interest in an enterprise where there's a management team, and it's really whenever you're buying a stock or a bond, you're relying on that management team. Those are the third-party efforts we're talking about, where someone is creating value for you, you're passive, and you're expecting their efforts to generate a return.
So just
Very interesting so far. If you think about something like Polkadot, for example, it is a utility token. It is there. It is a key component in not just maintaining Polkadot, but the parachains that are built upon it. It is like the internet. This is why I think it's amazing and very well fitted that they called the Web3 Foundation the Web3 Foundation. And there are people working and building third parties on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Polkadot, so on and so forth. But they're not necessarily selling and promoting the tokens at this point. This is why actually the lawsuit started with Ripple, Brad and Chris, who the lawsuit is against. Not against XRP, it's against these individuals for the sale of an unregistered security. Very interesting stuff. We'll listen to a clip from Brad in just a second, but let's go ahead and play this because this, by the way, isn't recent. Let me just make that very clear. This is 2019, I believe. I remember watching this. And yeah, it was interesting, very different from what Gensler's campaign is trying to achieve or not achieve. And I do believe that there are paid reasons why they're choosing to target crypto in the way that they are. It's kind of like that Brad, can't remember his second name, Schmidt or something, one of the congressmen from the SEC. Not the SEC, sorry, one of the Congress. He essentially, his largest donors are financial institutions. Things aren't always as they seem on the surface.
to be clear, for example, a book of the month club that we're joining on an ICO or a golf club membership, we're not expecting any financial gain there. That would not be considered a security. Am I right?
Fair enough. If you have that system up and running, if you have someone promoting the next golf course and is selling interests, and the architect and the land and all the key items aren't there yet, and you buy 25 memberships, that may be an investment. You're looking for a return on that. On the other hand, if you go down the road and you buy an investment or you buy a membership in a club that's up and running and you just use it to play a round of golf, that's probably just a good old golf membership.
You and Jay Clayton, the head of the SEC, have been very adamant that you are not going to change the definition of securities laws to fit this new technology. One of the points you made in your speech was the concern about the fraud that was out there in this space. Are you seeing significant fraud?
We do certainly see cases where people are trying to repackage an investment opportunity as a coin or a token and saying that somehow because it's labeled that way, it's not an investment security. And in many cases, we have seen people doing that where the underlying enterprise is not a solid investment opportunity. It's been misrepresented. So we do see fraud, and we do see it being packaged up this way. On the other hand, we think there's an enormous amount of promise in the distributed ledger technology and blockchain technology, and we meet frequently with legitimate parties here really trying to do something innovative, and we're trying to help them navigate the securities laws as they do so.
How refreshing. I mean, would that not be a better approach to work with the industry rather than just completely ban it and be a tyrant towards it? Ultimately the victims here are the citizens of America. Which, honestly, as an outsider looking in, it seems like there's a lot wrong with America. That doesn't mean there's any, the individual, the American, that's not an attack on the American people whatsoever, with the same. It's more just, there's a lot wrong right now, but let's move on from that. I don't want to go down that dark, deep rabbit hole about the fabrics of society and what's wrong with them. We can look at this clip from Brad Garlinghouse talking about regulations and talking about the fact that the US needs to embrace crypto regulations, or you're going to see companies leave it. This is a trillion-dollar industry, soon to be multiple trillions of dollars, that the SEC seems adamant on pushing offshore, and One thing concurrent that I've seen is actually if you look at the regs, I can't understand them, which is kind of like, okay, I've not got legal specialities, you know. However, it's not just me. Some of the biggest lawyers in the entire US, even the judge in charge with the US, the Ripple and the SEC case, is struggling on a lot of this and saying that things aren't really that clear. We've seen some big wins out of the Ripple case. It's not just a XRP case versus the SEC. It's a crypto case versus the SEC. It's going to give a lot of clarity. I think XRP and it's sort of not partner token, but similar tokens, I won't mention the names, are actually going to do absolutely spectacularly at one point. You're just going to have to wait a while for it. And actually, XRP holders, I think, have largely had a bad deal in terms of if you were going to invest in anything in the crypto space, XRP's largely underperformed most of them. That's a fact. Certainly since the case was brought forward. So let's go ahead and play this clip, and then I'll wrap things up.
See, bringing the case against Ripple was not really just a case about Ripple or about XRP. It's really about the industry and how the SEC is kind of playing offense and attacking the whole industry. 2.5 years ago when this started, I'm not sure everyone fully digested that, and now that is widely understood. This is going to be pivotal for the whole industry because if the SEC is able to prevail, I think there's a lot of other cases, and some of them just in the last 4 weeks, I think they brought 5 additional enforcement cases. The macro headline for me is this is not a healthy way to regulate an industry. Your regulation through enforcement, as opposed to where we're seeing in other countries where they're doing the work, right? They're codifying, they're creating a framework that allows an industry to grow while protecting consumers. And I think that's really what the U.S. is lagging. And to some degree why I'm here in Washington is to continue to try to evangelize and educate. Here's how these technologies can really benefit consumers, benefit industry.
Is what I'm hearing from you essentially, if the U.S. doesn't get its act together and move more quickly, all of this is going offshore. It's just going elsewhere.
Well, it already is. I mean, the sad reality is that the U.S. really is already behind. This is not behind countries that we haven't necessarily heard of. This is behind Australia and behind the UK, Japan, Singapore, Switzerland. There's a lot of countries that have taken the time and thoughtfulness to create that clear rules of the road. By contrast, when I first got involved in the tech industry in the late 90s, some were saying the internet should be banned. They were saying, like, here's how the internet is being used for illicit purposes. But the U.S. government said, no, we're going to create a framework. And that allowed entrepreneurs, that allowed investors to come in and look at the benefits to the United States on a geopolitical basis to have the Amazons and Googles based and headquartered in the United States. We're at, I think, severe risk of having that not happen in this next evolution of technology around blockchain and crypto. It has already started moving outside the United States. And also, the consumers are suffering because of that, because you don't have the same protections that the U.S. regulatory frameworks can provide.
What would a good framework look like, in your view?
Well, look, I think what you're seeing right now is the Securities and Exchange Commission. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And not everything here is a nail. And I think any framework has to start with clear protections for consumers, but then to thoughtfully understand that these aren't always going to be securities. Some of them are used as currencies. That is, having an efficient process to trade, exchange, move those things would be much harder in a world if they were regulated as securities.
Fascinating. Isn't that interesting? Just some perspective on things. I really do think, and actually it was a huge win for crypto, the SEC Congress, where they actually looked at or grilled Gensler. His sort of answers to a number of things were not sufficient. On that note, guys, I'm going to love and leave you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think of Hinman's remarks in regards to the crypto space? This may be the first time some of you are hearing this or even know about this. Of course, this was inspired by the fact that the SEC actually tried to hide Hinman's emails and stuff like that, and the judge said, well, why? I'm not going to allow that unless you can give me a damn good reason. On that note, I'm going to love and leave you. Have a wonderful Wednesday, guys. See you in the next one.